everyone and welcome back to ImTechnos. In today's video, we are going to understand how Amazon SageMaker Clarify can be used to detect a bias in a training dataset. Before we jump into the hands-on demo, let's first understand what SageMaker Clarify actually is. Amazon SageMaker Clarify helps you detect a bias in your machine learning models and datasets. It also helps you explain how your models make predictions. Bias in machine learning happens when a model treats certain groups differently because of patterns in the data or the way the model was trained. Sometimes the issue starts with the data itself. If the training data does not represent all groups fairly, the model will learn those imbalances. For example, imagine a model that was mostly trained using data from middle-aged customers. It may not perform equally well for younger or older individuals because it has not learned enough from those groups. So bias can also appear after training when the model starts making predictions that favor one group over another. We can measure whether differences exist in outcomes across groups, and we can analyze which input features are influencing predictions the most. This is where Amazon SageMaker Clarify becomes important. SageMaker Clarify helps you examine your dataset and your model to identify potential bias. You can analyze bias at different stages. Before training, by examining your raw data, after training, by evaluating model predictions, even after deployment, by monitoring the live model. You define which attribute you want to evaluate, such as a gender, age, or income group, and Clarify calculates fairness metrics to detect differences across these groups. In addition to bias detection, Clarify also provides feature importance analysis. This helps you understand which features are driving a model's decision. The reports generated by Clarify can support internal reviews, compliance discussions, and help you identify areas where your model may need improvement. Now let's understand how it works at a high level. First, you provide your dataset or your model endpoint to Clarify. Then, you specify the sensitive attribute, for example, gender. Clarify then checks, is one group treated differently from another? Or is there any imbalance in predictions? Finally, it calculates fairness metrics to identify bias. Now that we understand what SageMaker Clarify is and why it is important, let's move to the practical demonstration and detect the bias in a real-world loan dataset. Imagine this scenario. You're working in a bank and your bank has historical loan data, like past customer records. And based on that data, you want to build a machine learning model that can automatically approve or reject loan applications. On the screen, you can see a simple CSV file. This dataset contains columns like gender, income, credit score, age, and approved. Here, the approved column is our target column. If the value is 1, it means the loan was approved. If the value is 0, it means the loan was rejected. So far, everything looks normal, right? However, is this data fair? If your data is biased, your model will also become biased. So machine learning models learn patterns from data. If the historical data contains unfair patterns, the model will simply copy and automate that unfairness. And that's dangerous, especially in banking. Now let's focus on one specific column, which is gender. In bias detection terminology, this is called a sensitive attribute. A sensitive attribute is a feature like a gender, age, race, a religion. These are the attributes where discrimination should not happen. In our case, the sensitive attribute is gender. Now, what exactly do we mean by bias? So, bias means one group is treated differently compared to another group. For example, if males get loan approvals 80% of the time and females get loan approvals only 40% of the time, that is a major difference. And that difference may indicate unfair treatment. So what we are going to do now is we will use Amazon SageMaker Clarify to check whether loan approval rates are significantly different between males and females. If there is a large gap, Clarify will help us measure it mathematically. So in simple terms, we are not training the model yet. We are first auditing the data because responsible AI starts with fair data. Now let's move to the hands-on part and see how SageMaker Clarify actually detects this bias step by step. Now I'm in the AWS Management Console. I'm using Singapore region, which is AP Southeast 1 for this demo. First, we need to create an S3 bucket and upload our loan dataset into it. Make sure your dataset file is saved as loandata.csv. Now go to the search bar, type S3 and select it from the results. Once you are inside the S3 dashboard, click on Create Bucket. Now give your bucket a name, for example, Loan Bias Analysis Data, and then to make it unique, just add some numbers. So you can keep all other settings as default, scroll down and click Create a Bucket. Once the bucket is created, open the bucket by clicking on its name. Now simply drag and drop your loan data file into the bucket. After that, click on Upload. And that's it. Your loan dataset is now stored securely in Amazon S3. Now in a new tab, in the search bar, type Amazon SageMaker and select it from the results. Make sure you choose Amazon SageMaker, not Amazon SageMaker AI. Okay? Once you open it, the screen may look slightly different depending on whether you are using it for the first time. If you are a new user, you will see an option called Get Started. If you already used SageMaker before, you will see an option to open SageMaker instead. So in that case, simply click on Open. For new users, click on Get Started. Next, it will ask you to set up Amazon SageMaker Unified Studio. So choose Setup with default options. You need not worry about creating any IAM roles manually or configure any special permissions. Just click on Setup and proceed with the default configuration. This process will take a few minutes to complete. So let's wait for the setup to finish, and once it is ready, we will move on to the next step. Now, as you can see on the screen, Amazon SageMaker Unified Studio is ready. Go ahead and click on Open. Once you are inside the Studio interface, look at the left-hand navigation panel, click on Notebooks, and then click Create Notebook. So why we are creating a notebook? Because Amazon SageMaker Studio allows us to use Python code to interact with SageMaker services. So instead of manually configuring everything, we can automate the process using the code. You can give any name to the notebook. For example, you can name it as Loan Bias Clarify Analysis. Now paste the following code. Let's understand this code first. We are importing SageMaker SDK and the Clarify module. This allows us to run bias detection using Python instead of using the AWS console. And then a session connects our notebook to AWS services. And the role gives permission for SageMaker to access S3 and run processing jobs. And without this role, job will fail. This is the location of our dataset in S3. So Clarify reads data from S3 and writes output back to S3. Now let's configure the input path. So go to S3, open the bucket where you uploaded the loan data CSV file. Click on the CSV file. Here you will see an option where you can copy the URL. Now go back to the notebook and paste this URL into the S3 input path section of the code. Now let's configure the output path. Again go to S3, go to the bucket and click on Create a folder. Name the folder as Output. Scroll down and click Create folder. Once the folder is created, open it. On the right hand side, you will see the option Copy S3 URL. Just click on it. Now go back to your notebook and paste it into the S3 output path section. Okay, and make sure the last forward slash is removed. Okay, otherwise you will get an error. So remember, the only change you need to make in this entire code is updating the input and output path. That's it. Okay. Here, we are explicitly telling Clarify the column names because if we don't define headers properly, Clarify may not detect the sensitive column correctly. And this is the most important part. So we are telling Clarify that approved is equal to 1 is a positive outcome and check fairness based on gender. Okay. So Clarify will compare the male approval rate versus female approval rate. This tells Clarify where the data is located, where to store the results, which column is called, and what type of dataset it is. So in simple terms, data config means how Clarify understands our dataset. So this creates a processing job inside SageMaker. It will spin up one ml.t3.medium instance to run the bias analysis. This is not training a model. This is only running a data analysis job. This section indicates that we are running pre-training bias detection. That means we are checking fairness before training any machine learning model. Okay, so this is the responsible AI. And if everything goes well, it will print that the job has started successfully. Now scroll up completely and click on run and wait for it to complete and generate the report. If you scroll down, you will notice that some logs are being generated. These are the processing job logs from Amazon CloudWatch streamed directly from the SageMaker Clarify processing container. So don't worry if you see a lot of text appearing, that is completely normal. If you want to confirm whether the job has started successfully, wait for this message. Once you see this message, it means the Clarify job has started running properly. Now, if you want to monitor the progress of this job, open a new tab. This time, in the search bar, type SageMaker AI, not just SageMaker. Okay, SageMaker AI, and click on it. Once you are inside, look at the left-hand navigation panel. Under Data Preparation, click on Processing Jobs. If you don't see your job immediately, click on Refresh. Now you should be able to see the processing job that we just triggered from the notebook. Okay, so you will notice the job status is in completed state. If you are seeing the job status is in progress, that means the SageMaker Clarify is actively running the bias detection analysis and you need to wait for some time. If there is any configuration issue, it may go to the failed state, and in that case, we need to check the logs to debug it. As my job status is in completed state, that means the bias reports were generated by Amazon SageMaker Clarify after analyzing our loan dataset and stored in S3. Now let's go and check them. So open the S3 browser, go to the bucket we created and open the output folder. If you are seeing it as empty, please make sure you refresh the folder or refresh the whole page. Now you should be seeing multiple files. So these are the bias analysis report generated by SageMaker Clarify. Now you only need to download the analysis.json. So go ahead and download that file. I have downloaded it and opened in a Visual Studio Code, and you can see the bias metrics inside it. Okay, so inside this file, we can see three main sections. So one is the overall data set and the male group and the female group. However, we are not going to discuss every single metric because that may overload you. Instead, we will focus only on the most important one. Now to make it easier to compare the values, let me split the editor screen. I will keep the male group metrics on the left and a female group metrics on the right. As you can see, I'm comparing the values from the same file. I'm just splitting the screen so that we can view both sets of bias metrics at the same time. The first important metric is DPL. So DPL stands for difference in positive label proportions. Now, in simple terms, DPL tells us whether one group is receiving more approvals compared to another group. Now let's look at the values. For the male group, the DPL value is 0.045. This value is very close to 0. So when a DPL value is close to 0, it means the approval rate for that group is close to the overall average. So in this case, there is no strong bias against males. Now let's look at the female group. The DPL value for females is minus 0.1454. This is a negative value and it is not close to 0. It is around minus 0.15, which shows a noticeable difference. A negative DPL value means that this group is receiving less positive outcomes, in our case, less loan approvals compared to the reference group. So what does this tell us? It indicates a potential bias in the dataset. In simple words, females are receiving less loan approvals compared to males in this historical data. And this means our dataset is not completely fair. Now let's look at another metric, which is KS. KS stands for Kolmogorov-Smirnov statistic. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. However, in simple terms, KS measures how different two distributions are. The higher the value, the bigger difference between the groups. For males, the KS value is 0.045. This value is very much closer to 0. When a metric is close to 0, it generally indicates very little difference. So there is no strong bias observed for males. However, for female group, the KS value is 0.145. So a value of 0.145 indicates a noticeable difference, and again this suggests a possible bias. Now let's move to another metric, which is TVD. TVD stands for Total Variation Distance. TVD measures how much the approval rates differ between groups. The closer the value is to 0, the smaller the difference. For the male group, the TVD value is 0.045. This is very close to 0, which indicates no major difference. However, for the female group, the TVD value is 0.145. This is a noticeable difference around 0.14 away from 0. This confirms the same pattern we observed earlier. Based on DPL, KS, and TVD metrics, we can clearly observe that females are receiving lesser approvals compared to males in this dataset. This indicates that the dataset contains bias. So if we train a machine learning model on this biased dataset, the model will learn and replicate the same bias. Because machine learning models do not understand fairness, they only learn patterns from data. That is exactly why it is so important to use Amazon SageMaker Clarify before training a model. Clarify helps us detect these issues early and ensures that our model does not learn unfair patterns. And this is one of the key aspects of responsible AI. Now let's do the cleanup. First, let's delete the notebook. So go to the notebooks inside SageMaker Studio. Select the notebook we created. Click on three dots on the right hand side and click delete. Type confirm in the text box and then click delete. So we must do this step once we are done with job completion, because when we create a notebook, SageMaker launches a running instance in the background. So if we don't delete it, that instance may continue running and generate cost. Now regarding the processing jobs, there is no need to delete them. In fact, you can't delete them. They are simple job records like logs, and they do not incur any ongoing charges once completed. So you don't need to worry about them. Now let's clean up the S3 bucket. Select the bucket we created for this demo. Open the bucket. Select all the objects inside, including the input and the output folder contents, and click on delete. It will ask for confirmation. Provide the required confirmation text and proceed with the deleting the objects. Once all the objects are deleted, go back to the bucket list. Now select the bucket name, click on delete. So it will ask you to enter the bucket name to confirm deletion, paste it and click delete bucket. You can also see a bucket is created by SageMaker. Make sure you delete the objects and the bucket the same way you did for the previous bucket. So delete objects, delete bucket. Our cleanup is complete now. That's it for today. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and happy learning.